Welcome back to Ballers, Beers, and Banter. It's another fantastic Sunday night for everyone else except me. I did not do so well this week in fantasy football, but I am joined here with a probably much happier Anthony Harrison.
What's up, everyone?
And hello.
Yes.
So this week, Anthony and I are going to try we're going to try a new segment, which we'll introduce after Anthony does the headlines. It may not go well, but we're gonna dive right into it with our best efforts.
Yes. So we'll get a little bit more into it, and you'll see why we're gonna attempt and see how it goes. But I don't know. I think the listeners will be happy with it. We'll see. It depends on the success rate of how we get through it. But I have faith.
Yeah, I mean, we're two champions. There's no way we can't do it.
Exactly. This is nothing new to us. We're used to being successful under pressure. Speaking, and as you can all notice, if you're watching from YouTube and if you're listening, you haven't heard Dave. Dave is, I believe, is he in Egypt today? I believe he has traveled abroad. I don't know where he is.
I believe he's treasure hunting in the pyramids.
Oh, okay. Hopefully he's successful, brings back a little bit of treasure for us.
He'll be back tomorrow for
perfect.
the Monday night episode.
Perfect. Hopefully no technical issues this time. Hopefully he'll be actually back in Canada, not on some janky Wi-Fi or something, but I'm sure he'll be all good and ready to go. All right, so let's dive into headlines. So there was a few players that were maybe doubtful or questionable for today. Guys like Darrell Henderson was inactive, so Sony Michel took over. Odell Beckham ended up playing, was in and out of the game. I mean, nobody was really expecting anything from him. Josh Jacobs was also inactive on Sunday. Apart from that,
this is what we said. We exactly predicted this scenario with OBJ.
Yeah. I mean, OBJ is making his first, I think, I'm not sure. Well, we might get into it into the recap, but I think this was the first bunch of points that he got since like week 7 last year. First reception, I think I saw, or I'm not sure if he got a touchdown. I didn't watch too much of the game because as a Bears fan, it was quite painful, but we'll get into that a little later. Yeah, we won't touch upon that game too much, but other news, in-game injuries. James White went down with an injury in the Patriots game. Maybe this might be positive for Damien Harris down the line.
Well, it sure wasn't today, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, exactly. Bad news for the Giants. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton went down with an injury. So this is what we warned you guys about. We said, take advantage of Sterling Shepard while you can. The guy's injury prone, and he went down. Hamstring, which is that type of soft tissue injury that lingers, and depending how serious it is, you could be out for multiple weeks, or you could be out a game, or maybe not miss a game at all. So we'll have to see. And it's the same injury for Darius Slayton as well. Moving on, the Tennessee Titans, their receivers also experienced a bunch of injuries. A.J. Brown was out with the rest of the game. I'm not sure on the injury here. I don't know. It doesn't really say, but A.J. Brown went down, did not come back. He went out early in the game, and Julio Jones was looking pretty good until he left the game as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on those two guys going forward in the next week. But who knows? There might be a couple players that we have in our back pocket for the waiver wire pickup episode. Moving on to the Pittsburgh game. JuJu Smith-Schuster was ruled out with the game for the game with a rib injury. If you were smart, you probably weren't starting JuJu Smith-Schuster at all because he has not been productive enough. I mean, he was more of a flex option, but I mean, Diontae Johnson was also an inactive today, so slot in Chase Claypool. We'll talk about other successful people from that game potentially, but yeah, not looking too good for the Pittsburgh Patriots. My goodness. Pittsburgh Steelers. My goodness, they look rough. And as far as the news, I believe that's it. There was a few players that were down, came back in. Guys like Devontae Adams went down. He got back up. Apart from that, I think that those are the major or top echelon guys that were worth mentioning for the headlines today. And we'll have more updates tomorrow when it comes to those injuries.
All right. Well, super unfortunate for all those people who got injured. And, we hope that you drafted enough people to back them up, maybe make some wild trades, start looking at the waiver wire because I know there's going to be tons of people across the league who are going to have to pick up some people. This is going to be an exciting waiver wire week. A lot of teams are going to change.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned. We'll be doing our waiver wire episode tomorrow night with Dave. It'll be very exciting. So moving on to our next segment, the news segment. It's called the Moose Minute and the Harrison Hurry Up. And what we're going to do is we're going to recap each game of the week, alternating. We only have 1 minute to recap everything that happened in the game. And then once we're done recapping the games, we'll pick one or two of the more interesting games and we can talk about it and the fantasy impact it might have moving forward. So Anthony, you're going to be timing for me. I'm going to be timing for you. And when we hit 1 minute, just go ding, 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 and then you start your minute. Okay. And then I'll start timing for you.
Who's going to start this?
I'll let you start.
Okay.
Okay. You ready?
I am ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So I got Bears versus Browns. The Cubs were stomped by the Browns. Fields was sacked 9 times and allowed only 1 yard passing. So a combination of what he threw and the sacks, 1 yard passing. This is abysmal for my Cubs.
Your Cubs.
Cleveland, huh?
Your Cubs.
Yeah, the Cubs, the Bears. They look like Cubs. So Cleveland's defense looks great. Chicago's defense looked great. Offense is not there. Dalton will probably be back in next week if he is healthy. Allen Robinson disappointed again. Odell Beckham got into the double digits. So, I mean, if you start him, you're happy, but it's nothing great. Other than that, there's not much noteworthiness of players in this game. So, Justin Fields, 3.92 points. Hopefully you didn't start him. Baker Mayfield, 16.94. Nothing crazy.
Ding.
Go.
All right, so I'm going to be bringing you Washington Buffalo off the bat. And to me, I think this was the fantasy football game of the week. Just about everybody who is a fantasy football asset scored points in this game. Josh Allen came out 358 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. He is back to Josh Allen from 2020. On the other side of the ball, Taylor Heineke had an all right game. He turned it over twice, but for fantasy purposes, still scored really well. Antonio Gibson seems to be unhampered from his injury since he went for a 70-plus yard touchdown run. Looked fantastic. Zach Moss also back out there. He got a touchdown, had a couple of explosive runs. A key name to note on Buffalo's side, Emmanuel Sanders had 2 touchdowns. Maybe he's someone to pick up off the waiver wire if he's still sticking around. Terry McLaurin was a bit of a disappointment on the Washington side of things.
All right. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. So I got Baltimore, Detroit here. Detroit almost upset the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore wins 19-17 from a big 66-yard field goal that hit the crossbar. and then went over a new record for furthest kick in the NFL. Justin Tucker, of course, he did it. Lamar Jackson looked fairly decent, had another turnover in this game, finished with 19.28 points. Jared Goff, not a great week for fantasy, but the running backs, the backfield for the Detroit Lions, 20 points for DeAndre Swift, 47 yards, 1 TD, 60 yards receiving, caught 7 of 7, and Jamal Williams, 42 yards, 1 touchdown. So the running backs look pretty successful over there. Tyson Williams disappointed, and all the receiving players from each team, nobody in the double digits. This is wide receiver dead zone. Mark Andrews, 13.4 fantasy points. If you have him at tight end, you're definitely happy. Justin Tucker, 16 points. This one was what?
Kickers matter.
Kickers matter. Exactly. And that's all I have with that. So you want to switch to you now?
Ding, ding, ding. Yes,
Ding, ding, ding.
I will be talking about Arizona Jacksonville. A bit of an exciting game. A couple of people who, we've been waiting to see break out a bit this season are getting back to their regular paces. Of course, I'm talking about James Robinson. Scored 21 fantasy points, 88 yards, 1 touchdown, and 6 receptions for 46 yards. So if we were worried about him, maybe we shouldn't be so worried. Kyler Murray, by the way he played, you would have thought that his fantasy points were through the roof. And unfortunately, they were kind of on the low end for Kyler Murray, but he still had a fantastic game. James Conner is another name that, even last week we sort of said, hey, Chase Edmonds is the guy. And we figured it was potentially because of injury and that James Conner would get the goal line work. And it seems like maybe he's healthier, and he did get that goal line red zone work, scored 2 tutties today. So very exciting. Maybe we'll see more from James Robinson. DeAndre Hopkins was out with an injury. Christian Kirk was the lead dog.
Ding, ding, ding. All right, so I have Atlanta versus New York Giants. This one was a snoozer, my friends. 17-14 for the Atlanta Falcons. Fantasy-wise, this was depressing. But Saquon Barkley finally made it into the double digits, 18.4 fantasy points. And, of course, we're talking half-point PPR here. So 51 yards and a touchdown, 16 carries, caught 6 of 7 for 43 yards. Looked pretty good. Mike Davis, again, disappointed. If you thought you were getting a late round running back one, he's failed you so far. Calvin Ridley disappoints again with 10.1 fantasy points in half-point PPR. Cordarrelle Patterson, again, in the double digits. Is this guy worth it off the waiver wire? They're using him everywhere. They said he's the running back 2 on the team, but the receiving game, he caught 6 of 7 for 82 yards, 7 carries for 20 yards. This guy is showing up. Kyle Pitts, again,
ding, ding,
disappoints.
Ding. All right, I'm bringing Kansas City and the LA Chargers to you. Patrick Mahomes struggled in the early game, was not doing so hot. He finished the game with 27 of 44 passes, 230 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he pulled it together in the second half. But the Chargers defense was giving him a real hard time. Justin Herbert had a fantastic day for fantasy football. 4 touchdowns, 281 yards, 26 of 38 completions. Justin Herbert shaking off the rust. I think he's going to have a great rest of the season. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we were worried about this guy too. He showed up today. He scored a touchdown, unfortunately had a fumble, but went for 100 yards. Austin Eckler, again, I said he'd be outside of the top 15, but he's making my eat my words because almost 20 points this week. Mike Williams, another character, 3 weeks in a row, scoring tons of points, 29.7 points this week, 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen, he's not looking as good as Mike Williams.
All right, so now coming back to me, I got Indianapolis versus Tennessee. Tennessee beats Indianapolis 25-16. Carson Wentz disappoints. He ends up playing. He might have sat out this week because of the injuries to both his ankles. Only had 194 yards, no TDs, no interception. Very mediocre. Tannehill, 3 TDs, 2 interceptions, ended up with 23 fantasy points. Looking like Dave's late round QB pick is doing super well. Derrick Henry, again, 113 yards. 2-point conversion, 3 for 3 receptions, 31 yards, finished with 17.9 fantasy points. Jonathan Taylor disappoints again, 7.7 fantasy points. Naeem Hines with 16.4, caught 6 carries for 25 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 for 6 for 54 yards receiving. Michael Pittman again gets into the double digits. And this was the team where I said,
ding, ding, ding. I'm bringing you New Orleans and New England. And this game is the opposite of Washington and Buffalo. It was probably the least interesting fantasy football game today. The only really relevant people were Alvin Kamara, and we knew that week to week he's going to be the best running back in New Orleans, and Kendrick Bourne of the New England Patriots. Well, like we always say, you'll never be able to predict which one of the wide receivers in New England is going to have the day, and today it was Kendrick Bourne. I think I'm just going to take the rest of the minute here just to chew into Damian Harris. So James White went out with an injury, and Damian Harris didn't seem to be able to take the opportunity to step up to be this top 12 running back that you guys are talking about, which of course he'll probably do next week now that I've said this, but he only scored 2.1 fantasy points this week. What a letdown.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're not done, but I guess I'll
I
thought
I was. I thought I had only like one more second.
Now you have one more second. Okay, stop, reset. All right. I have the Denver Broncos against the New York Jets. Denver Broncos shut out the New York Jets 26-0. Teddy Bridgewater was not the streaming quarterback you thought he would be. Finished with 11.8, but he didn't need to do that much because the defense killed it. Like I mentioned, they shut out the Jets. The Broncos finished with 19 points. The Broncos defense, that is. Noah Fant, disappointed, but another injury to this offense. KJ Hamler went out with an injury, which I didn't mention before. He finished with 3.3 points. Tim Patrick caught 5 for 5 for 98 yards, looking like he will be the second wide receiver there. Cortland Sutton, disappointing week. Corey Davis didn't get into the double digits. The running backs for the Denver Broncos looking good, both in double digits. 18 carries for Melvin Gordon, 12 carries for Javonte Williams. Each of them had touchdowns, which is why they ended up in the double digits. So a big week for Denver, 3-0. We can move on.
Ding, ding, ding. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. Wow, this game I thought was going to be more interesting once I started watching it, and it was not. Joe Burrow looks better than he did last week. I think he had 2 touchdowns with Jamar Chase. He did.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, Ben Roethlisberger looked like he probably should have retired this season. He looked sluggish. He looked slow. And frankly, he kind of looked like out of shape.
Yeah.
The running backs, Najee Harris finally had a big breakout game, 21 points, 40 yards. 40 yards on the ground and 102 through the air. Is that right?
I'm not looking at the game, so I trust you.
Anyways, Joe Mixon, pretty disappointing. Jamar Chase, obviously fantastic. 2 tutties, put up 20.5 points for fantasy. Chase Claypool put up 14 points. It'll be interesting to see what happens next week with Diontae Johnson potentially still out and JuJu Smith-Schuster injured.
Ding, ding, ding. All right, so moving on, I had Seattle against Minnesota. Minnesota beat the Seattle Seahawks 30-17 for the first win of the season. Kirk Cousins, again, another big week, 24.12 points, 323 yards, 3 tutties, no interceptions. Russell Wilson, below 20 points. He's a guy that you think could be your starter for your fantasy team, but finished with 16.62 points. Didn't have a turnover, but didn't get the ball down the field enough. Alexander Mattison, filling in for the inactive Dalvin Cook, looked like Dalvin Cook on the field, 20.1 points, 112 yards, 6 for 8 receptions, 59 yards receiving. Chris Carson looked great, 80 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 for 2, 2 yards receiving, 15.2 fantasy points. Metcalf finally had his big game. Dave won that beer bet, so Moose will have to drink. And Justin Jefferson.
I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
And also, ding, ding, ding. I'm bringing to you Miami, Las Vegas. There's only one quarterback that needs to be talked about in this game, and it's Derek Carr. Way to go, Derek Carr. You're really showing people that, you got some skills. He put up 22 fantasy points this week, and I think he's slotting himself into someone you could stream and maybe even keep as a reliable quarterback on your team. Way to go, Derek. Peyton Barber filling in for Josh Jacobs put up 20 points, but I wouldn't bank on this to be a regular thing while Josh Jacobs is out. Might have just been a fluky fantasy day. No one else really relevant in the running game. I apologize for ever, suggesting that Myles Gaskin might have a breakout season. I should have stuck with my gut. And never drafted a Dolphins player. So now you know why. Now you know why I say that all the time. For wide receivers, Hunter Renfrow, always reliable, 16.2 points. And Bryan Edwards on the board, 3 for 5 receptions, 89 yards.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's coming.
All right. My last game, Tampa Bay versus the Los Angeles Rams, the Tampa Bay Bucks, that is. 34-24 for the Rams. Both quarterbacks killed it in fantasy. Matt Stafford with 29.52 points, Tom Brady for 27.68. Tom Brady, 432 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 turnovers, 55 attempts, 41 completions. Giovanni Bernard looked really good. 14.6 fantasy points. As far as the receiving game goes, Cooper Kupp looking like the top receiver in the league with 26.1 fantasy points. Chris Godwin on the Tampa Bay side, a guy who I said would be the number 1 receiver on the Tampa Bay offense with 16.6. Mike Evans had a good week as well, 14.6. Deshaun Jackson making an appearance in fantasy again, looks super fast, but he's old with 19.5 points. There we go.
Bringing you Green Bay, San Francisco. So this game, in terms of fantasy, played out exactly as you thought it would. Aaron Rodgers maybe a little bit disappointing. Only got 18.54 points. Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, goodness. Bring in Trey Lance already. And they did, and he scored a touchdown. Running backs, Aaron Jones put up 15 points, just as you'd expect. 49ers backfield, what a disaster. I mean, Trey Sermon got in. He looked all right. I can understand why everybody else was ahead of him in the pecking order. Kyle Juszczyk scored more points than him in fantasy. What a strange backfield. In terms of the wide receivers, it's as you thought. Devontae Adams killed it, put 25 points up on the boards. Marquise Valdez-Scantling actually caught a ball this week and a touchdown. Way to go. Looks like you guys can actually pull it off. Brandon Ayuk, I guess in week 3, he's a professional because, he got 4 of 6 receptions for a touchdown. And George Kittle did what you thought he would do.
There you go. All right. We killed that. Actually, that went better than we thought. I've had quite a few beers today, so that went pretty good.
That was all right. But we got to go back on a couple of the games, I think, because there was Arizona Jacksonville. I think I was just because I had mentioned that AJ Green, might be a viable waiver wire pickup if you have the room, and it seems like DeAndre Hopkins is dealing with an injury of some type, so he could be out next week, and it's very clear that if DeAndre Hopkins isn't there, Christian Kirk's the guy.
Yeah, and these are things to cue in to as well if it happens with any other team. So DeAndre Hopkins, the entire week, like you mentioned, was potentially doubtful for the game. Last minute, he was active, which means when you have this news of him being potentially inactive for Sunday, it's probably because and when they do play, he's probably going to be a distraction. So guys like Christian Kirk and not this week, but Rondale Moore and AJ Green should be slotted in when you hear that the top receiver on a team is dealing with an injury or hampered by injuries. So Christian Kirk was pretty successful this week. Rondale Moore was not. AJ Green showed up. But, this is a situation like Denver where they have an onslaught of receivers and week to week, you're not sure who's going to get the ball. So, sometimes you just gotta hope for the best.
Yeah. And the Arizona defense looked amazing. Yeah. But one thing to note, though, is that Jacksonville's offense did look like it was clicking a little bit, despite playing a very tough offense. It was a beautiful pass to DJ Chark in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. I think once this team gets their ducks in a row, they're going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. And since I mentioned kicks, I mentioned that Justin Tucker hit that 66-yarder. Matt Prada attempted a 68-yard field
Yes.
goal,
I meant to, I
missed.
was going to mention this, but we didn't have time.
Yeah, he attempted a 68-yarder, missed. Jacksonville returned that missed kick for a touchdown, and I think it, started a fire under their butts and
Yeah.
maybe got them into the game a little bit more.
Well,
But
he tied the record for return yards. It was 109
yes,
return yards.
yes, ridiculous. But yeah, I guess what we'll just mention is notable things to us because we all watch different games. I'm not going to talk about my Bears. I'm not going to bore you with the Bears because that was just abysmal. But like we said, you should be careful with Justin Fields and not play him this week because we don't know what to expect. But I mean, this week there was quite a few games that were exciting. There was a lot of boring games, and I guess week 3 you it's the week where you figure out whether teams are for real or not. What we've seen of them is to be true or if they're pretenders. What I would say to the people, since I watched Baltimore, Detroit, what I would say to people is if you had Baltimore as one of the Super Bowl contenders, I think you should go jump off a bridge. I know that's a little extreme, but I mean, Lamar Jackson doesn't look that bad, but I'm saying,
hey, he passed for 287 yards.
287 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have 1 bad interception, but the team is plagued by injury on the defense and the receivers. I mean, Marquise Brown.
It's funny that you use the word plague because I think 13 of them are out with COVID related.
COVID
issues.
And legit injury. Well, not that COVID is not a legit injuries, but the normal injuries, whether it's lower body, upper body, or whatever it is. We're not going to get into the defensive injuries today, but another notable mention, Marquise Brown. He looked good week 1 and week 2. Week 3, he dropped some easy catches, and
he dropped a few easy ones today.
Yeah, exactly. So Baltimore could have blown Detroit out of the water here, but didn't look too great. And like Moose has mentioned, like last week and the week before, that the backfield for the Baltimore Ravens is kind of like a wasteland. So Tyson Williams didn't have the most carries this week. Latavius Murray did, but Latavius Murray 7 carries for 28 yards. Tyson Williams 5 carries for 22 yards, 0 of 1 receptions. None of the running backs caught anything out of the backfield, which is awful. And the scary thing about Lamar Jackson is compared to last year, he was just bad at throwing and ran most of it. This year, he seems indecisive on both ends, whether he wants to throw it or run it. So I think they got lucky to win this game. Literally, Justin Tucker had to break a record to give them the victory. So it might be tough, and especially for your survivor pools. Don't count out Detroit. Their defense, I mean, they're not winning games. They're 0-3, but they're giving certain teams a run for their money. I forget who they played last week, but I think at the first half of the game, they were tough on defense. So hopefully there's more things to come from Detroit and they can be relevant maybe in a year or so. I don't know what else stood out for you today.
Well, other than the fact that Las Vegas is 3-0.
Yeah.
John Gruden came in, everybody says, oh, what's he doing? What's he doing? He's rebuilding the team and looks like they're getting there.
So did you watch this game? Like what happened? They were getting smoked.
No, they weren't.
It was 14-2, and then they just came back and it finished 31-28.
Maybe they did then. I thought it was more of a sort of back and forth, each team sort of scoring, but I was on and off while I was watching it. But I don't know. At the times that I was watching it, Las Vegas looked they looked in control. They looked good.
Yeah. And as a Jalen, I just want to mention one more thing on this game. As a Jalen Waddle owner in our Dynasty League, I know our point system is a little bit different than most leagues, but he finished with 10.8 fantasy points. I just want to mention that he had 13 targets. We said he would be a good fantasy value because him and Tua have a rapport from college. But I mean, Jacoby Brissett threw the ball 13 times to Jalen Waddle, and he caught 12 of 13 for 58 yards. I mean, 50 yards is not a lot of yardage for 13 targets, but
It's like just over half a field.
yeah, but that's positive for Jalen Waddle owners. Maybe you can flex him depending on some weeks. Las Vegas does have a good defense. I know this was a high scoring game, but yeah, and like I said, Myles Gaskin. Don't expect him to be a top running back option.
Yeah, of course.
Malcolm Brown.
Now that we've said that, he's going to blow up next week.
Right. But it has been 3 disappointing weeks from him.
Yeah.
And
it's not looking so hot.
it's a running back by committee. Malcolm Brown had more fantasy points than him, 9.1. He had 8.9. So, I mean, I'm sure he will kill it one week, but not looking too good so far.
No, not looking good at all. All right. Do we want to move on to the tall boys of the week?
Let's do it.
All right, hit us up. So while Anthony gets himself sorted here a little bit, real quick for the people listening, maybe for the first time, tall boys are people who perform really well or maybe exceeded expectation today in their game for fantasy football.
Yes, and we call it the tall boy of the week because tall boys are because we're a beer podcast. Tall boys are a bigger can or bigger bottle of beer that is the amount of a pint, 16 ounce or 473 milliliters. For those of you watching YouTube, it's about this size. This is 473 milliliters. So yes. So I'm going to start by the QB position. The first one I have, he's not in the top 5, I believe, but he is up there. Sam Darnold, noteworthy, a guy that had very mediocre 18 points for the first 2 weeks. This week finished with 23.3 fantasy points. He played on Thursday night against Houston. It was a favorable matchup. He looks good so far. I mean, he's loving his new team. They're 3-0, the Carolina Panthers, and he's using DJ
3-0.
3-0. Yeah, I know. I sounded very Canadian there. They're looking really good. But I do think you have to be careful, and I still think he's a streaming option.
Yeah.
When they have difficult matchups, he might not be that upper, or he might not hover around the 20-point fantasy category.
What's interesting to note as well is this is 23 points in a game where Christian McCaffrey went out in the first quarter. When did McCaffrey left pretty early on, right?
Yeah. Late first or early second.
Yeah, so you have to consider. I mean, if he has Christian McCaffrey in there as well, I mean that numbers might get boosted a little bit more.
Absolutely. Moving on to running back, I have Peyton Barber. So, like we had talked about all week, Josh Jacobs was dealing with an injury and was most likely going to be out. So people didn't know if it was going to be Kenyon Drake or Peyton Barber. In this case, or this week, it was Peyton Barber. He finished with 20.7 fantasy points. So if you swooped him up off waivers, if you had him because you thought he would be better than Kenyon Drake, he certainly showed up for you. It looks like he's the guy to go to as the for the handcuff of Josh Jacobs. So if he's for some reason on some waiver wire still, I mean, scoop him up. I don't know if it'll be consistent or worthwhile.
I think it's gonna be inconsistent.
Yeah.
If you have someone you can dump off your bench, by all means, pick up Peyton Barber, see what happens. But I wouldn't guarantee that he's going to put up 20 points, every week.
But do you still think Kenyon Drake has the opportunity to be successful, or is Kenyon Drake the third guy there, you think? Or if Josh Jacobs
I think Kenyon Drake is the pass catching back.
Okay.
And Peyton Barber is Josh Jacobs, smashing into people and doing the goal line work.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. I really don't see it as a 1-2-3. Peyton Barber's just filling in for Josh Jacobs, and Kenyon Drake's still playing the role he would be playing if Josh Jacobs was there.
Yeah. So, like Moose mentioned, Peyton Barber, 111 yards, 1 TD, 30 yards receiving. Kenyon Drake, 33 yards receiving, 8 carries for 24 yards rushing. So, Peyton Barber, 23 carries. Looks like he's the guy for now. But keep an eye on the injuries over there. It'll probably change week to week. Next on my list, wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders. Oh boy, Moose mentioned it in our recap segment. He
It's the Moose's minute and the Harrison hurry up.
Yes, I'm gonna have to get used to that. It's a new segment. Like I mentioned, we probably have had a bunch of beers today, but yeah, 23.9 fantasy points. This was a guy that we had mentioned in the offseason that he might be a potential late round sleeper or marquee guy. I don't know where he went in the drafts right now, but he had
He probably went undrafted.
undrafted. Yeah.
Probably. I mean, he's an old veteran who, had been dealing with injuries. When he was when he left Denver, he had injuries in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Was very inconsistent in New Orleans, but now he's in Buffalo with a healthy young quarterback who's seemingly targeting him.
Yeah. So he was the leading receiver on Buffalo this week. Caught 5 of 6, 94 yards, 2 TDs. Cole Beasley was number 2. Stephon Diggs, 6 for 10.
One of those tutties was so beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
He scooped the ball like an inch off the ground. It was really, really nice.
Very skillful. Definitely a veteran receiver catch. So, yeah, Gabriel Davis, if you're high on him, you might have to wait a little bit. I mean, I was hoping they didn't get another receiver, that it was just going to be Beasley, Diggs, and Davis can really make or debut.
The thing is, everything that Emmanuel Sanders is doing, that's going to be Davis. Mm-hmm. So if you're hyped on Davis, just know that it's coming.
Exactly. And now moving on to the last position, tight end. I have your boy, Tyler Conklin, 16.5.
Yeah, points. But I think there's another one you have to mention too.
Okay.
Do you have another tight end in there, or could we give the tight end?
If you have it already, I'll just pull up so I get his exact fantasy points.
Do. It's Dawson Knox.
Oh, yes.
Who put up 12.9 points. So not as much as Conklin, but still had a. I picked him up off waivers last minute, popped him in. Was very thrilled with the result.
Fantasy points did he have?
12.9.
12.9. All right. Well, I mean, that is definitely good. Tyler Conklin was my pick because everybody's being high on the Minnesota.
You know who wasn't? You know who wasn't though?
Who?
Me, months ago, when I told everyone to keep an eye on Tyler Conklin. And then even when Chris Herndon came around, I said, no, you keep your eye on Tyler Conklin.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Tyler Conklin's the guy.
So this is interesting. So Dawson Knox, he did do the 12.9, I think you said. Conklin finished as the highest tight end this week with 16.5, and in some non-decimal leagues, 17 points. Minnesota's tight ends have been, like him and Irv Smith Jr. have been, hot topics in the offseason for breakout tight ends. Do I read too much into Ty Conklin? Not so much. Kirk Cousins loves throwing the ball. I actually like the Dawson Knox one a little bit more because we know, can't think of his name right now. Josh Allen is going to throw the ball a lot. Dawson Knox is a very talented tight end, but I know there was a couple of them there last year. So keep an eye on Dawson Knox. But this week was a little bit better for tight ends than the last week. So
I think if you're in a situation where you're considering either of them, I think both of them are great pickups because it probably means that you didn't get, one of the top 5 big names, and you're rolling week to week with 3 to 4 points. But I think that Tyler Conklin and Dawson Knox both have the opportunity to, surpass that more consistently than, other later ranked tight ends.
Absolutely. And that's it for the tall boy segment.
Nice. All right. So did we say we were going to do a Reddit today? Is that what we're rolling into?
Yes, I have the Reddit. I'm going to pull it up right now. We can introduce it, though.
Okay, are you gonna do the?
I think we both have to do it. I think that's usually what we do. My
Last
voice.
time, last time we tried to do it together, it was a disaster. I could
Okay.
always just put Dave's voice in here.
But I think the viewers want to hear our terrible. So I'm going to make an attempt here. If I really fail,
yeah, we'll alternate. We'll alternate. You do it this week. I'll do it next week.
Okay. So here's our next segment called "They Said It Already." My voice cracked at the beginning, didn't it?
Oh, it sure did. That was terrible.
But I feel like the rest might have been good.
It was okay.
Yeah, the beginning was rough. Yeah. I heard it, but I just had to go with it.
Yeah.
Okay. My goodness.
We can't all be Dave.
We can't all be Dave.
A beautiful voice like Dave.
So just like I regret doing that intro, this Reddit from user DGen007 is draft day regrets. 3 weeks in, what has been your biggest regret looking back at your draft? Drafting a certain player, draft strategy. Who has it been for you?
Well, for me, right off the bat, I would have to say it's probably Myles Gaskin.
Oof.
He has been performing less than I had hoped he would. It's not too late. It's still week 3. I was hoping he would sort of, rise to the top of the committee in Miami and, do a little bit better, close to his end of year stats from last year. But it just doesn't seem like that's the case. They want to run with this committee. I mean, they've lost Tua now. Did Will Fuller even play today?
He did play. He was active for the game, but I don't know if he did anything. Let me just pull this up here. Miami.
So for me, that I think Myles Gaskin is definitely my draft
5.5 fantasy points, 6 targets.
Yeah.
Mine, I mean, we talk about our main leagues. We have a main dynasty league and a keeper league. The keeper league, it's not going so well for me. My points for this week was not so bad if I faced other people in our league, but I got smoked this week. And my biggest disappointment so far is Allen Robinson, Roman numeral 2. This is the first year I've drafted him. I usually have a rule where I don't draft any Bears players because I am a Bears fan, and it's just you shouldn't play fantasy with your heart. But actually, I'm gonna deflect here and blame you and Dave. But I technically agreed with you guys over the past 2 years that Allen Robinson is an elite wide receiver because he can play with any quarterback. This year, that is not true. The man has not hit double-digit numbers yet. I'm surprised I've won.
They've had tough matchups. To be fair, let's give Allen Robinson a little bit of a break.
Yeah,
I think he's going to turn it around.
Yeah, but it always sucks when top 3 pick is generating the least amount of points on your fantasy team. Not even if he was in the middle, I wouldn't complain so much, but it's pretty painful.
I have another one that the same situation that I'm starting to regret.
Well, who is that?
Jonathan Taylor.
Oh goodness, what a disappointment.
Yeah. So far, he's got to be able to turn it around. This is the thing. And like I said, he played Seattle, LA Rams, and Tennessee Titans. All of them are pretty good defenses. Hopefully next week. So next week he plays Miami, Baltimore. I mean, still, so maybe week 6 he'll turn it around when he plays Houston.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
back half of the season performance like he did last year. Like last year, it took him a while to get into it. Another guy that could be listed, I haven't, but I just traded him thanks to you giving me some helpful input as well on a trade that I made in my work league. Not this job, but another job. I traded Antonio Gibson away for Justin Jefferson. Antonio Gibson has also been a disappointment. Had a slow start last year as well. But Antonio Gibson, I said bench him this week for JD McKissick. If you did that, and you listen to me, I apologize. But fortunately for me, the league that I did that in, I still won, so it didn't matter. Yeah, but the actual next guy I wanted to mention, a lot of people asked me before they did their drafts for their leagues, if I have the number 1 overall pick, do I go with Christian McCaffrey? And I was like, how can you not? But so far, again, he's a disappointment. He's out for a few weeks
Well,
with his
hold on,
injury.
hold on. Choose your words carefully here, because he hasn't been a disappointment. He was fantastic in the games that he played. But what's disappointing is that it seems like his injuries
Right.
are coming back.
This is a little bit of a special case. Like the first 2 weeks, he was a very successful.
Yeah, he wasn't underperforming. It just seems like he might be, getting to that point where, I mean, it's no denying Carolina runs him a lot. They
Right.
use him a lot. So I think that wear and tear is catching up to him a little bit.
Agreed. So not the typical disappointment of player because he was successful, but I guess disappointing in the sense where, how I was telling people they shouldn't draft Saquon Barkley that early or avoid him if you can because he's gonna be more of a pain in the butt for your team than not.
It's disappointing because you want to just set him and forget him. But
right
now you have to worry about it.
Now you have to potentially go look for a handcuff, and it's the same thing with Jacobs and these guys with the injuries, the injury prone guys. But we know Christian McCaffrey will be out for a couple more weeks at least. I don't think he was put on the IR, but he'll probably miss 1 or 2 more weeks. So he will be a disappointment for the next 2 weeks because he is injured, but hopefully he'll come back super healthy and continue what he did in week 1 and week 2. But yeah, so far for me, it would probably be Antonio Gibson and Allen Robinson. Those are my 2 major ones.
Your regrets, draft day regrets. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
If listeners, if you guys have any draft day regrets that you would like to share, send us an email, 3bfantasypod@gmail.com, or send us a message on Instagram or Twitter, and maybe we'll talk about it on the next episode.
Yeah, and if you're on halftime, you can DM us there too. We have a halftime episode, which is a live podcast, but done differently than we do our regular
I think you just
Monday.
It's just a live show.
Yeah, like a radio show type where you guys come in if you want to chat with us. And it's live. We can get you onto the stage, they call it. You can ask us your questions on the spot. You can chat with us for a little bit. It's every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on the Halftime app. Very easy to sign up for. Use your Apple ID or use your Google ID. Takes no time. So join us there. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see you on Wednesdays. And you can DM us on the app as well.
Nope, I don't think you can.
No?
No.
Oh. Well, then when we make our posts on our waiver wire pickups,
you can leave comments on the posts.
Exactly. So you can ask us there with your waiver wire questions on our waiver wire posts, and the start sit or our 6-pack risk rankings posts. You can address us.
Speaking of the 6-pack risk scale, you said you wanted to go through this.
Yes, I do. So we'll go through it quickly.
We can go through it very quickly.
Yes,
because the first 4, 5. Actually, we've spoken about a lot of these already.
Yeah. So Darrell,
Derek Carr probably should have been like 5 bottles of beer.
Yes. So we had him at 4. Played super well. No complaints over there. So if you started him, you're happy. Darrell Henderson was actually inactive. We did warn you. We had him at 2 beers that if he plays, he'd be hampered. So he wouldn't do that well. But it turns out he was inactive. So the 2 beers was correct. Shouldn't have started him. Antonio Gibson, we had 3 beers. Had a big week. We said it was risky.
Could have go either way, and it went the right way.
Exactly. So I think most people had no choice to start him because backup running backs are kind of scarce right now off the waiver wire. So if you start him, you're happy. Starting Shepard. I mean,
he got injured.
He got injured. So it's not talent-wise that he wasn't successful. We had him up there with 5 beers, but it was an injury issue. So
Now
unfortunately.
my favorite one. Oh, Moose, you're bringing his numbers down. You're bringing his numbers down. Well, they should have been brought down. Damian Harris was way overbeard on this scale.
Yeah, but you didn't bring the numbers down. You went 4 beers as well on our individual ones. So we all sucked on that one. But I do believe that Damian Harris will be.
No, it's gonna be just like this, wildly inconsistent week to week.
But wait, James White got injured. We have to pay attention to his injury because now the backfield Rahamondre is still out.
James White went out like pretty early in the game. You would think.
Did he come back? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so
you would assume that Damian Harris would be taking over more work in this game, but it's not, because this is it. It's all strategy. They knew that they were going to be hitting up Kendrick Bourne, and not running the ball a whole heap today, and that's it. He's going to be wildly inconsistent. So he's going to have games where, yeah, sure, he might look like he's doing well, but then he's going to have these kinds of games where he's only going to get 2 points.
True.
He's a Rocky 3 from here on out.
Yeah.
Robbie Anderson. Ooh,
we talked about that.
Yeah, we way overbeered him. AJ Brown, well, he went out with injury.
So Dave will be chugging for that one because he made 2 beer bets. You're chugging for the Metcalf one. He's chugging for the AJ Brown one. He didn't say it was null and void due to injury if there was one, but he guaranteed 15 points from AJ Brown. Did not get there.
I was hoping we'd have another big Tyler Lockett day. Not the case. It was DK Metcalf's day, and he crushed it.
Yeah, we had him at 5 beers out of 6, so we locked him in there. Noah Fant, 4 out of 6. I mean, to me, he's a start-worthy tight end week in, week out. We had him at 4 because the Jets are a terrible defense. He might be a 4 going forward, even more so because of the KJ Hamler injury. It did not look good. They did not show the replay because it was a pretty brutal leg injury. So it would be him, Sutton, and pretty much Tim Patrick going forward. There's other guys there, but I think those 3 will be the guys going forward. So you can count on Noah Fant going forward. Jared Cook going to pull up.
Yeah, he should have had less beers. Did not come close to a 3 beer worthiness.
But 3 beers is like in or out, depending on your options. I mean, it could go either way.
Could have gone either way, but he was a bit of a disappointment as far as tight ends go. Justin Fields, speaking of disappointments, man, that's what a rough start.
Yeah, and we warned people, like it was not really a him issue. It was the offensive line sacked 9 times.
But it's very clear why they didn't want to put their franchise quarterback in there year 1, because I think they're very aware that he was going to get sacked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal to watch. I somehow lasted 3 quarters and then I had to shut it off. It was painful. But we did warn you, if you wanted to take a shot on him this week because you thought he's the savior and he might
the defense definitely did.
Oh yeah. And then our last player, Austin Eckler, 5 beers out of 6, finished with 19.7 points in half-point PPR. Eckler, you slot him in every week. He caught 6 for 6 for 52 yards and a touchdown, 11 carries for 55 yards. Nobody's going to take any work away from him. Not looking good for your bold beer bet.
I know. It was a bold one.
It was a bold one, but those will get you.
Yeah, but it's only week 3. We still got a few more weeks to go. Things could change.
Yeah,
Damian Harris might suddenly.
Oh goodness,
be amazing and push.
That was my bold beer bet. So
ladder.
You had Eckler outside the top 15. I think I had Damian Harris inside the top 15. So it'll be interesting.
It will be. Okay, well that's it for our 6-pack risk scale from last week. There'll be another one on Wednesday night, because we do it live on the halftime show, and then we put the graphic up Thursday morning.
Yep.
So you'll see it Thursday morning on Instagram, and if you come listen to us live, you can even contribute. You can say, no, that's a ridiculous beer scale. We want to give him more beers. or take away. And speaking of beers, Anthony, what are you drinking?
So I had finished it pretty early in the episode. I've had this before. It's throwback beer, but Brasseur du Monde, Brewery of the World. It's an IPA, Septième Ciel, so Seventh Sky, 5.7%. It's a strong beer, but I think 5.7% is not usually considered strong, at least for us Canadians. I know you Americans love your light beers. That's not making fun of you because
Anthony,
I love the light beers.
Hey, I was gonna say, Anthony, you only drink light beers.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
I've just got a classic Labatt 50.
Labatt 50, delicious.
Labatt 50 is delicious.
Yeah, I had a few tall boys today from this brewery. I think this is going to be the Brasseur du Monde. I think their beers are going to be my Sunday favorite going forward. I had a few of them today. There were some new flavors over at the Dépanneur, or for your English people, the corner store. Yeah, there was a bunch of other IPAs, and they were all tall boys. So I feel tall this week because I've won 4 out of my 5 leagues. Feels great.
I feel the opposite of what you're feeling.
But you'll bounce back.
But I'll have to say this, because in case anybody else out there enjoys fishing, I was out on the lake with my Uncle John. He's been really nice taking us out on his boat a couple times in the last few weeks. It's been absolutely fantastic. We found a great fishing spot, and I hauled out the biggest fish I've ever caught in my life. It was a huge smallmouth bass. It was absolutely incredible. It was the funnest thing I did all week by far. And I think that because I hauled out this monster fish, it like unbalanced like positivity in my life. So because I had this awesome experience, it was like, well, then you're not going to win as much fantasy football this week.
Oh goodness. Yeah. You win some, you lose some. And I mean,
that's it. You can see a photo if you go on my Instagram. You can find us if you watch YouTube. You'll see our handles, or just go on YouTube and you can. I'm sure you can find me. It's 3B fantasy_moose. There's a photo of the fish. It's a behemoth.
Yeah, I mean, you're the waiver wire expert. So kind of like you fish for waiver wire targets in the waiver wire pool. You got this beautiful fish, and it is beautiful. In the lake that you went out at, and I mean, you're killing it. I think it's 2 in a row now. You had this week.
I caught. I've caught 3. We went out twice, and I caught 3.
Nice.
Which I think by like if there's actual like fishermen listening, those numbers aren't that great. But in we're not the most experienced fishermen, so those numbers are pretty good for us.
But I mean, what's good for people who fish is, I mean, I've gone out a couple times. I went out with my boss at my previous company a couple times to fish for muskie.
Yeah.
When you have your spot, if you find a good spot in a lake where you know the fish are going to bite, chances are it's going to be good for you. And you usually don't share your secret with anyone else because that's your spot. So if you found a couple good spots, I think you'll continue to catch some good fish.
I hope so. I think that's the biggest one I'll ever catch, though, at least in terms of smallmouth bass, because they only grow to a certain size,
right?
And I think that one was it was like the Eddie Lacy of smallmouth bass.
Yeah. And what's funny about fishing is I consider it like golf in the sense that I'm not a great golfer. So when you hit a nice shot after you've been out on the course for like 3 hours, you feel it's so rewarding that you had that one nice shot, and it makes the whole day worth it, even though it was terrible. With fishing, when I went fishing for muskie, I didn't catch it, but I got one. And then I panicked because I'm not a fisher. So I kind of like tugged too hard.
Yeah.
It was as if the fish came out of the water, was still on my hook. But when he threw himself out of the water, he unhooked himself from my hook. And then he might as well would like flip me off. It was as if he flipped me off and was like, "Not today, sucker," and then went back in the water. And he was big. He was big. I would have
Well, that's
felt,
a musky. They're big fish.
yeah. So that would have been a great one and only, or I think it was my second time going fishing. It would have been a great second trip going fishing, but didn't happen, and I haven't gone since. But it was fun. It is fun. It's nice and relaxing. You have a few beers, a couple drinks, a sandwich on the water. It's very peaceful.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do my own sign off. Dave
Okay.
Dave texted me what I'm supposed to say in these things, but I'm just gonna say, well, that's it, folks. We're wrapping this one up. We'll see you. Anthony and I will see you next Sunday, and all three of us will be here tomorrow, Monday night, for our waiver wire episode. See you then.
Ciao.